Every afternoon at exactly शाम के 4:17, 8-year-old Lily Harper pushed open the heavy glass doors of the Cedar Falls Public Library. The timing mattered to her. Not because anyone told her it should, but because habits made life feel safer. The library smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. It was warm in winter, cool in summer, and nobody asked questions. Lily liked places where adults whispered instead of shouted, where problems felt smaller because they were surrounded by shelves that had survived decades. She walked past the computers, past the local history section, and sat at the same corner table near the window. Third chair from the left. Always. Her backpack hit the floor with a soft thud. Outside, Iowa skies hung low and grey, rain tapping gently against the glass. Lily rested her chin on her hands and watched people hurry past with umbrellas and coffee cups, all of them moving somewhere important. She wondered what it felt like to be sure you were going home. Her mother, Emily Harper, had taught her these routines without ever calling them lessons. After school, Emily would say, tying Lily's shoelaces tight, "You go straight to the library. Homework first. I'll get you by 7. Emily worked nights cleaning a medical clinic, and mornings folding linens at a roadside motel. She smiled a lot, but only with her mouth. Her eyes were usually elsewhere, calculating hours, bills, distances. Habits were how Emily stayed upright. And Lily learned early that following them meant survival. She opened her notebook, wrote her name neatly at the top of the math page, then stopped. Her pencil hovered. That morning, Lily had woken up to hear her mother crying again. Not loud crying, the kind people do when they don't want to be heard. The kind that leaks through walls anyway. Lily lay very still in bed, counting the cracks in the ceiling. She counted because counting was something she could control. She didn't tell her mom she had. She never did. Instead of math problems, Lily turned to the last page of her notebook, the page she saved for drawings and thoughts she didn't know where else to put. She stared at it for a long time. Then she began to write. Her handwriting was careful, slow, each letter formed like it mattered. Dear someone, my name is Lily Harper. I am 8 years old. I live with my mom. She works very hard and is very tired. She paused, erased a word, rewrote it. We don't need toys. I know those cost money. I don't need a phone or games. I just want a home where my mom doesn't cry at night because she thinks I'm asleep. Her chest felt tight, but she kept going. I promise I am quiet. I do my homework. I help with dishes and laundry. If you don't want kids, I understand. I just wanted to ask because my teacher says asking is brave. She read it once, then added one more line at the bottom. If you can't help, it's okay. I hope you have a nice day. Lily folded the paper 3 times, pressing the creases flat with her thumb. She didn't know who someone was. She didn't imagine millionaires or miracles. She just believed that words, once written, had to land somewhere. Near the library exit stood a crowded corkboard, flyers overlapping like fallen leaves. Piano lessons, lost dogs, church rummage sales, handwritten notes asking for rides or help with rent. Lily stood on tiptoe and pinned her letter with a red thumbtack she borrowed from the reference desk. It sat crooked, half hidden. And that was enough. She went back to her table and opened her math book. That same evening, Daniel Whitmore parked his car in the same spot he always did. Second row, under the flickering light. Daniel liked routines because they kept his mind from wandering into places that hurt. He was the CEO of Whitmore Logistics, a nationwide freight company, decisive, respected, unreachable to most people. But on Tuesday nights, none of that mattered. On Tuesdays, he was just a widower with a library card. 3 years had passed since his wife, Claire, died suddenly from an aneurysm. No warning, no goodbye. One moment she was asking what to cook for dinner, the next she was gone. Daniel survived by building habits the way other people built walls. Morning runs at subah ke 5 baje. Black coffee, no sugar, no television. 1 hour in the library every Tuesday. Books were predictable. They ended. Life hadn't. He written a biography he didn't finish, grabbed a novel he probably wouldn't read, and headed toward the exit. That's when he noticed the corkboard. At first, it was just the handwriting. Uneven, childlike, careful. Daniel stopped. He read the letter once. Then again, something in his chest tightened, sharp and unexpected, like a memory waking up. He thought of the house on Maple Ridge Road. 4 bedrooms, empty since Claire's clothes were donated, her toothbrush thrown away, her laugh turned into an echo. I'm not ready, he'd told himself every year. But readiness, he realized, had quietly become a habit of delay. Daniel stood there so long that a librarian glanced at him twice. You all right, sir? She asked. He nodded, folding the letter carefully back into place. He didn't take it, didn't change a thing. But that night, for the first time in 3 years, Daniel didn't go for his run. He sat at his kitchen table until sunrise, staring at the keys to a house that no one lived in. And thinking about a little girl who believed that asking was brave. Her coffee mug hovered halfway to her lips. Lily was at the small kitchen table, swinging her legs, humming softly as she packed her one backpack. Nobody knocked on their door in the morning. Bills came in envelopes. Bad news came by phone. And hope usually didn't come at all. Another knock. Emily's first instinct was fear. Rent was late. It often was. She wiped her hands on her sweater and walked to the door, heart beating faster with every step. She opened it a crack. A man stood in the hallway. Tall, late 40s, grey wool coat. No smile, but not cold either. His eyes looked like they had learned restraint the hard way. "Ms. Harper?" he asked gently. "Yes, my name is Daniel Whitmore. I read a letter yesterday. At the Cedar Falls Public Library." Emily's breath caught. Before she could answer, Lily appeared beside her, eyes wide. "The letter," the man continued quietly, "was written by a little girl named Lily." The hallway felt suddenly too small. "Ek se ek don't know what you were talking about," Emily said automatically, the words of a mother trained to protect first and ask later. Daniel raised both hands slightly, not surrender, but reassurance. "I'm not here to report anyone. Or judge. I'm here because I couldn't sleep after reading it." Lily tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, barely audible. "He's the one, the someone." Emily looked down at her daughter, then back at the stranger. Her knees felt weak. "May I come in?" Daniel asked. Just for a minute. They had nothing to hide, but everything to lose. Emily stepped aside. The apartment was small, too small for secrets. Daniel noticed everything without staring, the peeling wallpaper near the sink, the patched couch, the stack of library books on the floor. Clean, careful, proud. Lily sat very straight at the table. Daniel didn't sit at first. He stood, hands clasped, like a man unsure where he belonged. "I want to be clear," he said. "I didn't come because I felt sorry for you." Emily stiffened. "I came because your daughter reminded me of something I forgot." He finally sat, across from Lily, lowering himself to her level without thinking. "You wrote that asking is brave," he said to her. "Who taught you that?" "My teacher," Lily answered. "She says people don't fail because they ask. They fail because they don't." Daniel let out a slow breath, the kind that comes when truth hits deeper than expected. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," he said, turning to Emily. "Since then, I've lived very carefully. Same routines, same excuses. I told myself I was being responsible. But really, I was practicing being alone." Emily listened, arms wrapped around herself. "I own a house," Daniel continued. "It's empty. Has been for years, and every morning, I drive past it and tell myself I'm not ready." He looked at Lily again. "Your letter made me realize something. Waiting can become a habit. And habits shape who we become." Silence filled the room. Then Daniel opened the folder he'd been carrying. Inside were papers, neatly arranged, official, unmistakably serious. "I'm offering you that house," he said. "To live in, rent-free, no deadlines, no cameras, no conditions." Emily stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. "No," she said, shaking her head. "We can't, this is too much." "We're not." Daniel raised a finger gently. "Let me finish." He slid a document forward. "There's also a small trust. For utilities, school supplies, transportation, nothing extravagant, just stable." Emily's vision blurred. "Why?" she whispered. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Lily. "Because once," he said softly, "someone gave me a home when I didn't know I needed one. And I promised myself I'd pass it on. I just forgot until yesterday." Emily's composure broke. She covered her mouth, tears slipping through her fingers, ugly, unfiltered, years overdue. "I work," she sobbed. "I try so hard. I never asked." "I know," Daniel said quietly. "Your daughter did." Lily stood up and walked over to him. "Will my mom be able to sleep?" she asked. Daniel swallowed. "Yes," he said. "I think so." 3 weeks later, sunlight poured through the windows of a house on Maple Ridge Road. Lily ran from room to room, barefoot, laughter bouncing off walls that hadn't heard joy in years. Emily stood in the kitchen, hands shaking as she opened cabinets that went empty. That Sunday, Daniel arrived with groceries, nothing fancy. bread, milk, apples. He stayed for dinner, not as a savior, not as a CEO, just as a man relearning a habit he once lost, showing up. Final moral. The most powerful changes don't come from money. They come from breaking the habit of waiting. A child's courage, a mother's endurance, a widow's choice, and one quiet knock that turned survival into a home.